I've been writing a novel in Obsidian for a month and a half, and this is how it's going. In front of you, you will see my canvas view for my entire novel at a glance. I call it my novel hub. At the top, the biggest section of the screen here is my very, very detailed outline for the novel so far, clocking in at 2,700 words, chapter by chapter, beat point by beat point, setting, time, everything. Down here, this is my parking lot for notes on things I want to come back to as I work my way through the novel. And right here, my Bible, this is a data view query showing each scene, the setting, the plot, the date, the amount of words that I've typed of that scene so far, and which draft number it's at. As you can see, everything's on first draft until you get to draft 0. That just indicates the chapter I'm on right now. And up here, you will see my total word count so far, clocking in at 14.7 thousand words. Let's call it 15K for easy math. And I have a little bar here, progress to 80K, that holy grail number for a full-fledged, thick novel. Just a little bar that ticks up every time I come in for a writing session and motivates me to keep going. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes to talk to you about tactical points on how I'm using Obsidian to write this novel and just general novel writing progress update for a lot of you whose first time this might be, because it is my first time, and I think learning from a beginner to another, even more beginner is sometimes helpful. So a few points to understand. Right now, with 15K words done, I'm done part 1 of the novel. It's going to be a 4-part novel. My outline divides it into discrete chapters, but within those chapters, I've also chunked them into 4 parts based on the 4 stages of the journey of the novel. I find these are nice milestones for me, writing in parts. It makes it just a little bit more of a lighter lift than going from chapters all the way to the full novel. And the reason I'm writing this is I'm fully done part 1 out of 4. So you can see that part 1 clocks in at 15,000 words. If we use simple math and assume that all 4 parts are going to be the same, that means my novel draft will clock in at about 60,000 words. That's short of my 80,000 goal, but it's not a big deal, and I'll tell you why shortly. So a few things that come to mind when I'm done 25% of the first novel draft. The number one thing that I'm having to overcome is the urge to start over again. As soon as you're done 15,000 words, you immediately think about ways you can improve the novel, improve the voice, improve the story, and you think, I should just go back and edit that part 1 again, write it better, write it more full-fledged, and then continue. But I think that for me would be a trap and would be a mistake, because I've done this process before. I've gotten to about that 20,000 word mark in 2 previous novels that I wrote, as a teenager, early adult, and 20,000 was the wall. When I hit this stage of I'm out of ideas, it's getting harder and harder, and I got stuck in what I like to call the outlining spiral. So I'm trying to push past that by writing out a full draft from beginning to end. But focus is what's required for that, and that is proven to be a continual challenge. And what other things that are fueling the urge to start over is getting inspiration from outside of the novel writing process. So as I'm writing, I'm still reading. This book is what I'm reading right now, Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. Came recommended to me from David Perel online. Amazing book, 933 pages long, so it's a beast. I'm about 200 pages in. But immediately, once I read the first 1-2 pages, was enthralled with it, enthralled with the writing style, enthralled with the way it was written, the style. And one improvement I thought about for my novel is, instead of writing in the third person present, so that is, you refer to your protagonist by their name, like if it was Rambir said, and you're writing directly in the story, so as it's happening, the perspective is as it's happening. Taking from this book, I wanted to shift it to first person future. So you're writing as Rambir, you're saying I instead of Rambir, and you're writing many years in the future, so you're looking back on the events with hindsight. And the reason I thought I wanted to switch to that perspective is my character starts the novel as a preteen, so writing in the present form constricts me a lot because there's a lot of more mature commentary or perspective I want to take on the events of the character in this high school saga that wouldn't make sense coming out of the mind of a preteen. unless it was a very, very intelligent preteen, which is another kind of novel you can write. But I don't want to write that one. I want to write about the growth of someone coming into adulthood. So right away I thought, oh, I want to rewrite this first person, third person. That part's not as important, but future. So a future narrator, not like in the present moment. And thought maybe I'll go begin from the beginning and try it again. But I didn't, because then I'm going to get a total rewrite to part one again, and then something else will come up, and I'm going to want to do it all over again. So how do I avoid the editing spiral, the outlining spiral? So a few things I do. One point here, parking lot. So this note is just ongoing. It's getting longer and longer by the day. And these are just could be a little detail about someone's outfit, or could be a major plot point, or could be a totally different way to write things. I outline them here, and I will come back to them. So my parking lot is for just random catch-all for ideas, and then I'm starting to categorize them a bit better. So some things are not new ideas, but just loose ends, a character introduced that I need to come back to. The other thing I've done is my footnotes that I've put in my novel all along the way, they help me come back to things a little bit too. So I put a top footnote in here, footnote 11. If we go down, what is footnote 11? Need to rewrite this chapter with more focus on Happy's distinct, entertaining narrative voice. So there you go. So this footnote will then draw me back to this idea I'm having once I do a full first draft write and come back to a second chapter, as well as the notes in my parking lot. Those things are what's gonna trigger me to come back to this idea. Also, this first sentence here, this is the story of how my home led to my downfall. Very cringe, but just want to put that in. The tone I wrote that in is very different from the rest of the chapter. So I even started the first chapter, with the idea for a future narrator right there, out of context. But once again, once I do that second draft beginning to read through, it's going to prompt me to look at these ideas again. So just leaving breadcrumbs for yourself, I find, is a great way to get that out of you and not have to fall into an outlining spiral. So beyond that, ending with part one of the novel, I could have just pummeled right through into part two, but I felt like there was a medium place here versus not doing any introspection on how part one went, versus getting into an outlining spiral. So what I did is I picked up this book, Scene and Structure by Jack Bickham. It was recommended to me by the host of the Essential Guide to Writing a Novel podcast on Spotify. 150 words, and already I'm on page 22, and this is already giving me some nice gems. One gem was cause and effect. So everything in a story, there should be causes and effects for events, stimulus and response, logical order. Things are caused by things cause other things. In the real world is a lot more randomness, but readers don't tolerate randomness except on exceptions. So you really need to think about cause and effect. So what I did here is, just for part one of this outline, I put in a cause and effect column. Put the initial cause, what is the result of chapter one? What effect does it have on chapter two? What effect does that have on chapter three? And onwards until I get to the end of part one. Now, cause and effect can be more granular. It could be the discrete actions of each character, word by word, in your scenes. It's also relevant there, but I wanted to also think about a chapter level cause and effect. I may continue this column further down. I may not. I may mothball it later, but one way for me to just do a sanity check that everything I've written so far has a proper cause and effect. And when I find it hasn't, instead of going in and rewriting the chapter draft, I will just reflect it in the outline here. The outline is kind of my master working doc. So some things I've changed in the outline, but haven't really made their way back to the draft. That's fine. That'll happen later. As long as I continually overwrite the outline with my master view of how the novel's going to go, this will be my Bible. This whole hub here. My notes for what I'm going to come back to, my overall progress on the draft, plus my outline anchoring me. That's why I call this the novel hub. This is what I center on to understand where I am in this giant, complicated, crazy process. And it's proving really effective. Beyond that, let's get back into the point of outlining. Another thing that I could do right now is, each of these chapters has characters tagged to it. So, for example, let's go into this one here. If I go to the properties, there's all these characters that are tagged in the novel. So if I click the first one, I've got an AI generated image of the protagonist. The other character sheets haven't even been created yet. So I could spend a lot of time going in, creating the character sheet, writing bios, creating AI images that I can refer back to on what the characters look like. And I will do that. But I think that's probably more valuable to do in draft two. Once I have the initial spine of my narrative that I can come back to, it's going to make more sense there. This is not a fantasy novel I'm writing where that stuff is really going to govern where the world goes. This is half based on my own life, the neighborhood I grew up in. So I don't need to write out a lot of lore and special abilities and magic systems. I can come back to these character sheets later once I have a first draft, and then I'll have a more defined view of what these characters are, and I won't have to redo these character sheets. I find like that's just a big procrastination pitfall right now. So another point I wanted to make. Beyond that, as I'm writing draft one other thing I wanted to point out here is the word totals for my chapters. So chapter one here is 4,500 words. And then you see that things progressively get slimmer and slimmer. So, still got 700 word chapters here, but the last one I just wrote is 400 words. That's not a chapter, that's a page. But it's these chapters, I'm loosely calling them chapters. Some of them are very, very much mid-level outline views. So what are the beat points? What is a key piece of dialogue that comes to mind? What is a key takeaway? How does the scene begin? How does it end? Just a little bit more fleshed out than an outline. That could either be a signal that one, I'm really trying to get the spine of my story down, or two, this scene doesn't belong. I can't think of a lot of things that would really flesh out the scene. So maybe the key points I'm trying to weave into the scene from a plot development perspective, they can just be mentioned in passing in other scenes, and I can collapse my scene list down or my chapter list down to longer, smaller set of chapters when I go to draft two. It's all serving as further signal, but you're not going to know that until you write out the entire novel. I've got a lot of scenes from part 2, 3, and 4 of this novel that are in my head. The goal of draft one is really just to have nothing left in your head about your novel, right? You want it all in 60, 50, 40,000 words, so it's all there on the paper, on the digital paper for you to dissect. And you're no longer saying, yeah, but there's also this scene later on I haven't written yet where this cool thing happens. You want it all down on paper. So I'm really trying to go through and dump the entire cognitive load of this novel onto the page so that I can clear my brain for that second pass when new ideas will be engendered or I'll change other things up. That's really how I'm looking at it. And then finally, the word count, 15,000 words. If I continue this pace, I'll have 60,000 words at the end of it, at the end of draft one. That does not mean my novel is 60,000 and I've fallen short of my 80,000 word goal. It probably means I've written too much in this first draft. Because these chapters are so slim, that's 60,000. If I just took each of these scenes and fleshed it out to all the setting description, character description that's required of a real novel, my novel might be 400,000 words, which is not what I want for this genre. It means that I'm starting with abundance. So I've written down a lot of small scenes, a lot of small sketches. All of the, incongruent ideas of the novel are there. I have an abundant array of ideas in sequential, logical order for me to work from. And then in chapter 2, I'm going to act some of them, combine some of them, melt some of them away, expand some of them, and I'll just have an easier go of it in chapter 2. So this is vlog 1. I'm doing a vlog format of my novel writing process in Obsidian. If you found this helpful, leave me a comment so I know that you want more of this. Wishing you all the best in your own novel writing journeys. We'll talk soon. Peace.